Hi y'all, welcome to the channel. This video is sponsored by Cool Shirts. You can get snazzy clothing such as the hoodie you see me wearing before you. This is the very cool hoodie in purple. The link is in the description below. Thank you again to Cool Shirts for sponsoring this video. Let me paint you a picture. It's 2012, a crisp autumn morning. You head to the mall but go straight to Barnes & Noble because you're sophisticated. You run to the shelf, pick up a book, and guess what you're holding? It's Dork Diaries. I cannot explain the absolute chokehold this series had on me for no reason. Obviously, I reread the books for this video, and you know how some things that are aimed for kids are like literally works of art? This does not make that list, but I still had a fun time. We're gonna be recapping the first 3 books of the series today: Dork Diaries, Tales of a Not So Fabulous Life, Not So Popular Party Girl, and Not So Talented Pop Star. So Nikki Maxwell is the main character of the series, and she's supposed to be a sort of Marinette Dupain-Cheng type of girl, you know, from Miraculous Ladybug. I assume that you will know that reference if you're on this channel, but I don't know. Actually, there are a lot of parallel characters between Dork Diaries and Miraculous Ladybug, but that's besides the point. So Nikki is like the unpopular, artsy, nice. I mean, that's debatable, but we'll get into that later. But she longs to be like the popular girls and wear all the cool clothes and have all like the new expensive things and get all the male attention. There are actually a lot of things that I don't like about Nikki, but one of my main problems is how obsessed with popularity she is. And I wouldn't even be mad at that, but these books are specifically catered to young girls who probably relate to Nikki. But Nikki never really learns any lessons. I mean, she makes a mistake because of her damaging mentality, and then in the end everything works out and she's praised and she gets the guy and she has her friends and everyone is happy. So anyway, the book starts by introducing Nikki. She's in 8th grade. She has a mom, dad, younger sister named Brianna, and she's going to this fancy private school because her dad has attained the coveted bug extermination scholarship for her. I guess he somehow made some sort of deal with the principal that because he's the go-to exterminator for the school, his daughter can attend the school for free. Perhaps the fact that the school needs an exterminator on speed dial is concerning in itself. So Nikki basically wants 2 things in life: a new phone and to be a part of the CCP, the cute, cool, and popular people. The leader of the CCPs is Mackenzie Hollister, who's a sort of Chloe Bourgeois type of person. So instead of getting her a new phone, her mom got her this diary, you know, hence the name Dork Diaries. The book is like a collection of Nikki's diary entries. It's also interesting reading these books all these years later because there are definitely a few sentences in here that would not fly today. Also, the tone of the author is kind of weird. I don't know how to put it. It's almost like she kind of has this burning hatred towards teenagers and is a little bit like condescending, but is trying to sound like a teenager. I don't know, it's very weird. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, but anyway, I'll give you a few examples of some of the sentences that stood out to me. There's always at least one seriously mentally ill weirdo in every middle school across America. Deep down, I'm troubled and ashamed that a tiny part of me, a very dark and primitive side, would totally love to be best friends with Mackenzie. And yes, it's a huge inconvenience and definite turnoff to have to walk through the old ladies, fat ladies, and pregnant ladies departments to get to the one for teens. Skank was used, quoting Tyra Banks. Nick Jonas, Corbin Bleu, and Justin Timberlake were the standard for hotness at the time. Not to mention the casual use of the R slur twice. Chapters September 13th and 17th if you're curious. So the main plot point of this book is that there's this big art show going on at the school and Nikki wants to enter it because there's a $500 prize and that would help her get a new phone because, like I said, that's one of her main life missions. She was about to sign up, but she saw that Mackenzie had already signed up and automatically assumed that since Mackenzie was entering the competition, she would have no chance, so she signed up to be a library shelving assistant instead. The other 2 LSAs were Chloe and Zoe, Nikki's soon-to-be best friends, but let me tell you, I really don't think Nikki deserves these 2. It's not like Chloe and Zoe are perfect, but they stick with Nikki through thick and thin. And why? For what? Me and Nikki have beef. I have a whole list of grievances. So first of all, Nikki has no friends, right? She moved to a new school, she doesn't know anybody. But she isn't even happy when Chloe and Zoe starts talking to her because she thinks they're weird and then pretends to like them, but then she realizes, oh wait, I actually do like them. But she constantly makes comments about how she's embarrassed by them because, you know, they're not high on the popularity chain. The only reason that Nikki, Chloe, and Zoe became friends in the first place is because they bonded over the fact that they were talking shit about Mackenzie, who at this point hasn't even really done anything to Nikki except be slightly rude. Nikki lied to her little sister Brianna about the tooth fairy, which caused her to develop an irrational fear of the tooth fairy, which causes her to piss herself every night out of sheer fear. She's constantly mean to her parents and bragged about the fact that she bought the cheapest gift possible for her father for Father's Day and used the rest of the money to buy something for herself. She talks shit about everybody except for her crush Brandon, who's like the quiet, rebellious photographer for the school newspaper. She only cares about expensive things and being popular. When she tripped and fell in the cafeteria, one of her first thoughts was that she would be laughing if it were anybody other than her. She didn't return her elderly neighbor's hearing aid because she thought it would be a waste of time. Granted, I know that this is a children's book, so Nikki's probably acting silly and goofy on purpose. It's the author's choice. But that doesn't mean I can't have beef with a fictional character. Nikki, get your shit together because I'm coming for you. So let's get back to the story, shall we? So one day, Nikki is in class and she sees Mackenzie handing out invitations to her exclusive birthday party. They're in geometry class. Mackenzie happens to be sitting in front of her. She turns around and hands an invitation to Nikki, and Nikki automatically assumes this invitation is for her. Keep in mind, they've barely had any interactions. They haven't talked. They're not friends. Nikki starts opening the invitation and Mackenzie's like, what are you doing? That's for Jessica, the girl who's sitting behind Nikki, who's Mackenzie's best friend. And then she got mad at Mackenzie even though Nikki was the one who opened the invitation like unprompted. Then she ends up having her first interaction with Brandon, and guess how they bond? By talking shit about Mackenzie. Now don't get me wrong, Mackenzie does really messed up things, like that's not to be taken lightly, but with that being said, I low-key want to be on her side. I just feel like a lot of Nikki's complaints about her are unwarranted. For example, Nikki wrote down a list of why she hates Mackenzie, and this is the list verbatim. First, she ruined my chances in the art competition. Second, she dissed me by not inviting me to her party. Third, she ridiculed me by calling me uncivilized. Fourth, she publicly humiliated me by giving me an invitation and then uninviting me. And fifth, she tried to steal the one true love of my life, Brandon Roberts, by twirling her hair and flirting with him. Okay, so first of all, she didn't ruin your chances of getting into the art competition. You chose not to sign up. You assumed that she would beat you off the bat. Second, she doesn't even know you, so why would she invite you to her party? The third point is probably the only valid one. She did call you uncivilized, not her best moment. Fourth, you humiliated yourself by opening an invitation that wasn't intended for you, and you were never invited, so you can't be uninvited. And fifth, she can't steal your man when he ain't even yours. But for some reason, Nikki ended up getting a stroke of confidence and entered the art competition on the very last day it was possible to. So then I mentioned before, Nikki tripped in the cafeteria, and that's when she had her real first interaction with Brandon. A really nice, deep, riveting conversation, and I'll act it out for you right now. This is when Brandon was helping her up off the floor when she's covered in spaghetti. You okay? Sure, I'm okay. I had spaghetti for dinner last night, but it wasn't nearly this slippery. I think you have something on your face? Probably my lunch. Yeah, probably. I guess I'll see you in biology. Yeah, okay. And thanks, for the napkin. Hey, no prob. Actually, we have napkins just like this at my home. My mom got them for sale at Walmart. Oh, that's, cool. Well, later. Sure, see ya in bio. Truly riveting. So then, also earlier, I mentioned this whole hearing aid situation. Well, Nikki found her neighbor's hearing aid on the ground, and instead of returning it to her elderly neighbor, she went back into her house, spray painted it this metallic silver color, tried to use it in her history project, but that ended up giving her an ear rash, and so she made a bowl of fake vomit in order to get out of school because she didn't want Brandon to see said ear rash. When she eventually returned to school, the librarian said she would take 6 of the hardest working LSAs on a trip to New York for National Library Week. Chloe and Zoe were really excited, but if, and I quote, Mrs. Peach had announced she was taking us to New York to have a meet and greet with like the Jonas Brothers, Kanye West, and Justin Timberlake, I'd have hyperventilated, fainted, and rolled on the floor having seizures. Yikes. So Chloe and Zoe had this idea to get like book tattoos to show how dedicated they were to going to New York for National Library Week, but both of their parents vetoed that idea, and so they were super depressed and decided that plan B was to go to New York early, live in the sewers, and camp out until National Library Week. But then, thanks to Brianna, Nikki's little sister, Nikki came up with the idea to give them temporary tattoos. It'll have the same effect, everyone's happy. So then Nikki, Chloe, and Zoe created this whole business to have people bring in books, and in exchange they'll get a temporary tattoo, and then Nikki, Chloe, and Zoe started becoming popular, but then Nikki got overworked and wanted to quit, and so Chloe and Zoe left her to join the popular kids. When Nikki was popular, everybody was trying to be her lab partner in bio, and she said, and I quote, I didn't want to talk to people I hardly knew about tattoos. I wanted to have a really deep emo convo with Brandon about dust mites. So then on the day that Nikki had to turn in her art piece for the art competition, which was actually a watercolor painting that she already had given to her parents for their anniversary but took the gift back, Nikki had to get a ride to school in her dad's bugmobile, which has a giant roach on top, which would signal to the world that she is the daughter of the exterminator. And Mackenzie was the one who happened to see Nikki get out of the car. So now Mackenzie knows Nikki's big secret, and to make matters worse, her dad ran over the watercolor painting when he was driving away, and so now Nikki has nothing to enter into the art competition. At that point, she was super depressed and was convinced she needed to switch schools, but Brandon, Chloe, and Zoe created the art project for her. They took pictures of everybody who got temporary tattoos, put it up on the wall. It won first place, and then Nikki could stay at the school. Whoop-de-doo. So there's this big Halloween dance coming up, and Chloe and Zoe convinced Nikki that they should all sign up for the cleanup crew. They would get to the dance early and pretend that the boy band members are their dates, and no one would know because they would be be busy performing all night. The problem is Mackenzie is the chairperson for the dance and is making the cleanup crew's lives miserable because she doesn't like Nikki and makes them wear this like ugly uniform, and thus they'll look really dorky. Too bad they can't wear a cool hoodie like this one from Cool Shirts, link in the description. But remember Mackenzie's exclusive birthday party from book 1? Now it's finally happening. She invites everyone from the dance committee, including the cleanup crew, so they can see how a real party is thrown. She ends up going to the party, but Mackenzie and Jessica spilled chocolate all over Nikki's new dress, so she leaves the party without even telling Chloe and Zoe, and now she's all depressed. When she goes back to school, she ends up making up with Chloe and Zoe, and then they all agree to resign from the cleanup crew. But the thing is, everybody else besides the cleanup crew ends up resigning before them, leaving the cleanup crew to run the entire dance. Nikki also at some point gets hired to do face paint for Brianna's Halloween party, so now she's double booked. She has to run the dance and she has to do Brianna's little face painting gig. Then Nikki ends up talking to Brandon, and he says that he ended up rejecting Mackenzie, and that's why she decided to basically cancel the whole dance. So in a shocking turn of events, Brandon asks Nikki to the dance that may or may not be on. But now because Nikki was asked to the dance by Brandon, now she is obligated to make the dance work. So Nikki has this crazy idea to hold the dance at this haunted house near the zoo, which is where her face painting gig will be. And so now she has 3 different obligations. She has to do the face painting gig, in which she has to wear this ugly rat costume. She was asked to the dance by Brandon, and she's going to wear this pretty Juliet costume. But she was also supposed to hang out with Chloe and Zoe, and they decided that they wanted to be these little hip trash bag girlies, which was actually Nikki's idea, but now it's coming to bite her in the ass. She was also in charge of like trying to run this whole dance, throw it together. She was elected the new chairperson, so Nikki's got a lot on her plate, and she actually manages to juggle all these things really well until everything goes to shit. The kids from Nikki's face painting gig end up crashing the dance, and then the principal stops the dance, and then Mackenzie publicly blames Nikki for everything that's been going wrong. And then Brandon and Chloe and Zoe naturally are a bit confused because they were like, why didn't you just tell us about your other obligations? We would have understood it. But Nikki, one thing about Nikki is that she doesn't tell people about her problems, and then that ends up making things 10 times worse. And you would think she would learn from her mistakes, but no. Naturally, the book ended with everybody forgiving her, and Nikki and Brandon ended up dancing to a slow song. How sweet. Now, book 3 is probably the one that I read the most because as a kid, that was the only book that I owned that was at our house. So Nikki ended up taking Brianna to this restaurant called Queasy Cheesy, which is not unlike a familiar restaurant that we may all know and love called Chuck E. Cheese. They were chosen to sing this karaoke number up on stage when, surprise, surprise, Mackenzie also happened to be there, recorded a video of that, and threatened to post it on YouTube. And you know what? It wasn't just a threat. She actually did post it on YouTube. And Nikki thought it was going to be this whole big thing, but the very next day, nobody was talking about it because everybody else was talking about this upcoming school talent show in which this famous producer was going to be the judge, and if you won the competition, you would get to be on his new show, 15 Minutes of Fame. So naturally, Mackenzie assumes she's gonna win. She creates this really elite dance group called Max Maniacs and tries to poach Chloe and Zoe because they're really good dancers, but Nikki was already supposed to be working with them for the talent show. And so Mackenzie blackmails her. She'll tell the whole school about Nikki's bug extermination little secret, and she'll tell everyone about the YouTube video that's posted. And so Nikki is forced to lie to her friends and says that she does not want to do the competition, but they can feel free to join someone else's group. Also, suspiciously, there have been a lot of bugs roaming around in the school. Nikki ends up finding out that Mackenzie has been planting these bugs in order to get her dad to come to this school, but Nikki's been trying really hard to prevent that from happening. She's been not telling her dad about the principal wanting to meet with him. She's been intercepting his calls. She's trying to actively tell the principal not to contact her dad. She figures she already has the bug extermination scholarship, so it's not like they can kick her out if her dad doesn't follow through with his obligations. So Chloe and Zoe end up joining Max Maniacs, and then Nikki gets a letter in the mail, which is a tuition bill for her school that she cannot afford. And so she's freaking out, and once again, she has directly caused her own downfall. But then she realizes that, wait a second, the winner of this talent show will get a full scholarship to the school. What a coincidence. So she just decides to throw together a last-minute band. She ends up recruiting a keyboard player, a guitarist, and bassist, and Nikki's gonna be a singer, but they still need a drummer. And so one of the guys says he knows a guy, and guess who that guy is? Yep, Mr. Brandon. By the way, I forgot to mention that this whole time Nikki has been mad at Brandon because she thinks that he likes Mackenzie because he's been coaching her to be the new school photographer. But we should know by now, Nikki, you should know that based on every single interaction you've had with Brandon, he does not like Mackenzie, girl. You gotta calm down. She submitted the band's application to the talent show like at the last possible second, and because everything was thrown together so last minute, she named the band Actually I'm Not Really Sure Yet, you know, in the space where it asked what the band name was. So the band's together, everything's going well, and then Chloe and Zoe end up ditching Mackenzie because Mackenzie was publicly rude to Nikki, and they were like, wait, that's not nice. Even though they should have known that Mackenzie was rude all along, like that isn't new information. Now the band is Nikki, the guitarist, the bassist, the piano player, Brandon, Chloe, and Zoe as the new backup singers and dancers. They wanted to name their band Dorkalicious because that's what Mackenzie called them to insult them, and they thought it would be like a little haha funny moment. And then originally they were going to do a cover of Don't Stop Believin', but then they decided to compose an original piece about being dorks, and then Nikki made matching t-shirts for all of them, which were probably cool, but not as cool as my hoodie. You can check it out in the link in the description below. So on the day of the dress rehearsal, Chloe points out to the woman running the show that Nikki and her band actually can't perform because they never filled out their application in its entirety because Nikki wrote Actually I'm Not Really Sure Yet in the space that was supposed to hold the band's name, so then they were kicked out. However, Nikki has the brilliant idea of actually naming their band Actually I'm Not Really Sure Yet, and so on that technicality they would be allowed to re-enter. So they ended up performing, slaying, but they actually didn't win. Max Maniacs, Mackenzie's group, won. And then Nikki and Mackenzie had a little confrontation in the bathroom where Mackenzie ended up exposing that she was the one who sent the tuition bill to Nikki's house, thus it wasn't real. Nikki does not need to win that scholarship, and then Chloe and Zoe come in to say that the producer guy wanted to release their dork song right now because his show is for unpolished amateurs, but these kids are already stars, obviously. And so the book ends with Brandon and Nikki about to kiss, but they were interrupted by her little sister Brianna, and that, I hope, was a fun little walk down memory lane. Yeah, honestly, these books were a fun read. I had a fun time. Hope you all had a fun time too. I hope y'all are having a good day, a good time, and I'll see you next time.